This thrilling tale unfolds when two friends, Mel and Jules, arrive at the airport after returning from a trip to Mexico. Mel appears exhausted and still experiences motion sickness from the flight. She takes a moment to collect herself. While Jules goes to buy a bottle of water for Mel, she notices an older man staring at her, but she doesn't give it much thought. Just then, two young guys, Seth and Matt, approach Mel and ask for her name. However, Jules interrupts to tell Mel about a water fountain by the bathroom, since everything else seems closed at that hour. Meanwhile, they notice a little deaf girl, and Mel starts speaking with her using sign language. In the meantime, Seth strikes up a brief conversation with Jules before helping her with her luggage. However, Mel's luggage is nowhere to be found, and she's told to come back the next day to retrieve it. Following this, Mel and Jules wait in the pouring rain outside the airport for a ride home. Eventually, a shuttle bus shows up, and Mel flags down the driver to request a ride. Just moments later, another shuttle arrives, and the driver offers them a ride without them asking. Jules informs the second driver that they already have a ride, but this person continues to insist. When they decline, he asks Mel to find out the bus fare from the first driver, which is $30. Then the second driver offers them a ride for only $15. But before Mel and Jules can decide, the first bus sets off, compelling them to board the second one. As they enter the bus, they are greeted by a shy middle-aged man named Andy. Meanwhile, Seth and Matt are also seen waiting for a ride nearby. Seth notices Jules and tries to persuade Matt to board the same shuttle. Matt initially refuses, but he eventually decides to accompany Seth, and he reluctantly lets them join in. Now Seth sits near Jules, leaving Matt to adjust with Mel, while Seth and Jules engage in friendly banter. They are also unaware of the driver taking an unusual route for a while, but when they do, he claims the construction issue is to blame. Suddenly, a mysterious car speeds towards them, causing the shuttle bus to veer off the road. The driver pulls over to check the damage and informs them that they have a flat tire. Jules suggests calling a cab, but there seems to be no service, so Matt offers to help change the tire. After a while, Mel approaches Matt, who's helping the driver with a new tire. Then, as the driver searches for some nuts for the wheel, Matt holds the tire and an accident occurs. The whole bus collapses upon his hand, causing severe injuries. Seth quickly gives his shirt to cover Matt's hand as they board. The driver, oddly enough, takes hold of Matt's dismembered fingers and places them in a Ziploc bag. Eventually, as they seem to get lost, Seth starts getting increasingly furious with the driver and pulls out some maps to help him get back on the right route. All of a sudden, the driver pulls a gun and commands everyone to take a seat in the back. At this point, Andy begs to be let out and even offers him cash, but it is of no use. The driver demands cooperation and takes everyone's phones and wallets before driving off with them. Meanwhile, Mel believes that the driver isn't going to let them leave now that everyone has seen his face. She also tries to convince them that the driver knowingly injured Matt, as he was the only real threat to him. But no one believes her theories. As Mel and Seth argue about taking action, Jules finds a flare under the seat from the safety kit used to bandage Matt's hand. She quietly notifies Mel, and they come up with a plan to get the window open, but it's locked. Andy and Seth see this and cause a commotion. Possibly fearing for their own lives, they try to take the flare. But during the tussle, Andy accidentally sets it off, causing panic. The driver pulls over to remove the flare. Seeing this as an opportunity, Jules tries to escape through the door, but it's locked, and the key is missing. She beeps the horn instead. Moments later, the driver re-enters and points a gun at both Seth and Andy. He pretends to shoot Andy, but instead pulls out a switchblade and threatens them. Suddenly, he changes his plans and drives them to an ATM booth, where he sends Jules to withdraw some money. Jules comes up with a plan and discreetly sets off an alarm to attract attention. Unfortunately, the driver sees this and rushes towards her, but she manages to lock the door. Mel tries to escape, but finds the door locked again. As she looks around, she finds a crowbar on the floor, so she smashes the window with it and jumps out. However, the driver threatens her, making her surrender. Following this, he drives them to a supermarket and gives Mel some cash to buy supplies and a big bottle of water. He threatens to harm everyone if she attempts to warn anyone. Mel discovers a security camera and stands before it, hoping for help. She hands a note to the cashier, instructing her to check the security tapes when she leaves. Unfortunately, the cashier learns that the CCTV was never turned on. Meanwhile, Mel finds that the driver and her fellow passengers have already left. The driver chains Seth and Andy together on the bus, making them remove the girls' valuables and passports from their bags. Jules and Matt are also instructed to fasten their seatbelts to avoid any escape. Seth tries to persuade Andy to escape with him, but he is hesitant. Seth swiftly liberates himself and escapes with the driver, exiting the vehicle. Eventually, the driver accidentally runs him over with the bus and even reverses over his body, seemingly confirming his demise. Next, the driver returns to pick up Mel and Andy. When he discovers that Mel bought a bag of ice against his orders, Mel adamantly claims that it was for Matt and used it to soothe his injured fingers. After some time, Mel reveals a concealed knife from the ice, using it to cut their seat belts. Then, Matt smashes the window with the ice bag, and they all shout for help. However, the driver quickly approaches them, seizing a gun, prompting Mel to swiftly wound his wrist with the knife and then smack him over the head with the ice bag. Mel manages to seize the gun and shoots the driver. Jules and Andy are able to break free after this, and she forces the driver to hand over the keys to the belts. She then straps the driver in and takes the wheel of the bus, leaving Matt with the gun and Andy with the knife. Following this, the situation quickly deteriorates as Andy casually stabs Matt in the throat. However, no one notices this until it's too late. He then seizes the gun and points it at Mel's head, ordering her to get away from the pedals. Finally, it is revealed that Andy has been secretly collaborating with the driver all along. In the aftermath, Mel and Jules are forced to put their belts on, and Andy mistreats them until the driver convinces him to stop. After some time, the driver halts at a nearby bridge and, along with Andy, disposes of the deceased bodies of Matt and Seth in the water. Later, Mel discovers a tire iron under her seat and manages to discreetly keep it by her side. She also tapes Jules' mouth and does the same for herself, cutting a piece from each of their hair as a keepsake. Just as he turns his back on the girls, Mel strikes him several times with the tire iron, causing the driver to stop. She eventually breaks free and hits the driver on the hand as he tries to reach for the gun. Now, Mel takes control of the bus and drives away, but the driver immediately rushes towards her. Shortly after, she finds a knife, and when the driver reaches for the wheel, she digs him in the knee. Additionally, Andy also comes to attack her again, but Mel knocks him down with a fire extinguisher. The driver comes over again, and as they fight, the bus crashes into a wall. Following the crash, Jules wakes up to find Andy dead and the driver and Mel lying unconscious and motionless. She then runs away, finds a car passing by and flags it down. Within seconds, a man gets out and helps her get into the car to take her to the hospital. Jules then murmurs about Mel still being alive, so the man calls to report this accident. Unfortunately, this kind man is run over by the bus before he can help her any further. Additionally, Jules is also forced back on the bus, where the driver takes them to a warehouse. Now, as they reach the isolated warehouse, the driver asks if Mel and Jules have any tattoos. Jules reveals that she has one, but he forcibly burns her tattoo to remove it and puts a bandage over it. He also takes the girl's driver's license and puts them in a drawer that is already full of other IDs of people he has kidnapped or murdered over the years. Shortly after, he makes Jules dye Mel's hair blonde before making them strip down to their underwear. He then orders the girls to wear white high heels for an inspection. Strangely, the man who inspects them is revealed to be the one who ran them off the road earlier, and the same man who was seen observing Mel at the airport. As the driver inspects their bags, he finds that Jules has antifungal medicine and Mel has medication for motion sickness. Now that he knows Jules has a yeast infection, she is of no use to the driver, so he takes her onto the bus and gasses her with a tube connected to the exhaust. Meanwhile, Mel breaks the mirror and threatens to cut herself with a shard of glass, which would make her useless to him as well. However, as the driver approaches Mel to disarm her, she digs him in the arm with the glass. She also digs into his thigh, and when he falls over, she hits him in the face with the light fixtures. Finally, Mel finds the gun and shoots him before attempting to escape. On the bus, however, the bullet only skims over his head, so before she can start the bus, the driver attacks her once again. Then the two of them scuffle for a while before the driver forces Mel into a large wooden crate containing the items Mel purchased earlier in the store. Trapped inside the dark crate, Mel yells for help, but no one is there to hear her screams. Finally, as she's being carried away, Mel discovers a photo of 7 young white women in a filthy underground cellar. The photo shows the girls looking gloomy and bruised up, completely naked with their hair dyed, blonde and wearing white high heels like they were forced to wear earlier. It seems like those girls were also kidnapped by the driver and forced to become prostitutes overseas. As Mel looks at the photo in horror, it becomes apparent to her that she is to be sold as a sex worker too, and the supplies are for her trip. The crate is then loaded onto a cargo destined for East Asia. And as this thriller ends, we see Mel's luggage turning up at the airport.